and I'm Vice President for International Marketing Strategy at FIS. And I get the privilege of opening up the product seminar theatre for today. Today I'm going to be spending the next 15 or 20 minutes talking about a new wallet solution that we launched in the US about 4 or 5 months ago. And we think it's unique because of the way that it deals with some of the technology issues that are facing a lot of providers in the market today. Before I start talking about the product, just a little bit about us as an organisation. FIS is the world's largest provider of banking and payments technology. $5.7 billion in turnover in 2011, 111 markets, 14,000 customers, 33,000 staff. You've probably heard of some of the products that we offer, but not FIS itself. So FIS has grown over the years through acquisition, and we have some of the market-leading products in our portfolio. So you may even be customers of ours with IST or Connex or Base 2000 on the card side. Or on the banking side, Systematics and Profile. Certegy is one of the companies you may have heard of that we bought a few years ago and have integrated, or Metavante Technologies for prepaid. So we have a large portfolio of products and services that we offer across all markets. We were very proud last year to be ranked #1 in the FinTech 100 in terms of revenue for banking providers. So we are officially the world's largest provider of banking technology. As I say, 14,000 clients spread worldwide. About half of our staff are based outside of the US in 26 operating centres on a worldwide basis. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be opening up our first office in the Middle East with an office in Dubai. Enough about FIS. On to the mobile market itself and why we're interested in this and why you're obviously interested in this because you're here spending your time listening to me, for which I thank you. Everywhere you look today, somebody's doing something with mobile payments or NFC or m-commerce or mobile banking. And this is just a sample of some of the headlines over the last few weeks, taken from Finextra and a few of the other websites. Everywhere you go, everybody's doing something in some way, shape or form with mobile. And it's really hard as you go through this to try and find a pattern. Try and find really what it is that's driving the future of this industry. There's a lot of interesting pilots and a lot of interesting technologies out there that are starting to play around in the field, but none of it's really cutting home. And there's some reasons for that, whether we all know about mobile technology, especially with NFC, particularly with the lack of phones being available for consumers, some concerns around security, and really there's no one standard that's taking a lead. This last headline is interesting. The Olympics taking place later on this year in London. Visa have as an Olympic sponsor with Samsung, have a prepaid purse application that they're giving out to VIPs, athletes, journalists. And it's a really nice application. Sits on the phone, has a prepaid account on the back end, and we're proud to be the prepaid processing sponsor that sits behind that. I'm not going to talk about that application today. I'm going to talk about a slightly different one, which has some different benefits. Before I get on to that, I think it's worth looking at the way that consumer behaviour is changing. Anybody who tells you that mobile payments is a fad or it's not taking off is really not looking at what's happening on the ground. There's a huge growth in this market. Consumers have really taken it to their hearts, and with the right application, we think this thing could take off in a big way. There are probably 4 models when you look at the world out there today. Look at the big consumer brand, the Google Wallet application, which is really nice because they have a great affinity with their consumer base. They have a good technology reputation, and they're moving out into payments in a big way, so potentially quite a dangerous competitor. The problem with that from your perspective, it's Google branded. They own it, they control it, it's their application. They might let you sit on the back end if you're lucky, but it's one issuer, one phone. Moving further along then, we have ISIS. Again, it's card emulation via NFC. It's a telco consortium that put together and not really taken off yet, but to be watched, I think. For me, I think one of the most interesting applications is the PayPal application. They've extended from their eBay roots out into into internet payments and made a huge success of that, largely at the expense of the banks. And they're really good at the consumer interface. This is the thing they do best. They do the customer interaction really well. So potentially there's a really strong competitor there if they can get it right. The last model here is obviously our model. Surprise, surprise. And the benefit for you of the FIS Mobile Wallet is it's actually a white label product, so you get to brand it. It's your customer experience. You can embed it into your mobile banking application, your internet banking application. And the consumer experience is really strong because they can choose to add more payment types into the wallet at their own discretion. What I really like about the application, and we've got it running on a number of phones today, is that it'll run on just about any smartphone in the market today. No new technology, no special phones, no downloads. That's not strictly true, but no major downloads of applications that they need to do before you send the phone out to somebody that they've then got to personalize it. This is a really straightforward installation process. Why did we go this way? We went this way because we saw what's happening in the marketplace. We've looked at what our customers are saying, and a lot of banks are concerned about being disintermediated from their client base by a lot of these new players. They need to have an answer, but it has to be an answer that's easy to implement, it has to be an answer that's cost effective and that works. When you talk to the merchant base, and my experience with NFC, having done a lot of work in the area, isn't a great one. You look at the merchant base and the NFC terminals. If you can find an NFC terminal that's not tucked away somewhere under the counter, and I'll get it out for you if you really want to pay that way, or it's broken, or the cashier doesn't know how it works, then it's quite a good system. But those opportunities are few and far between right now. Now, a lot of the contactless cards out there today are just not being used. There isn't really that consumer benefit of having a contactless payment when I can actually just put my card in the terminal, I'll put the PIN in, I'm done. For a consumer, the FIS Mobile Wallet solution gives them everything. They have the opportunity to use NFC. The technology also runs on QR codes, which is the main source of this benefit for this application. I'll show how it works in a minute, which means that they can use it in pretty much any application. It's bank branded, so for you, your brand, your customer experience. It's deployed on the cloud, so there's no PCI problems for you with the application of the phone. There's no security issues with the phone. All of the account details sit in our secure applications that are served to you from the cloud. And it'll work with the phone you have in your pocket today 99.9% of the time. Unless you're my wife and you have one of the old ones that's about this size and it's got a screen about this big. But more importantly, it'll work with just about every terminal in the market today. And I'll explain why that is in a minute. And for me, that's the key. If you can get the acceptance, that's when it's really going to start to take off. Now, I was going to give you a demonstration, but my technology skills have let me down. So my phone here was going to be plugged into the projector, and it's just not going to work. Fortunately, in the best Blue Peter tradition, here's one I prepared earlier. It's a very simple application. This one's running on the Galaxy Nexus, which is a super phone, really nice, it's light, thin phone, but it can run on any smartphone. The application is downloaded from an app store in the normal way, and the consumer logs in. So first thing is I'm going to go into a store. I want to pay with my mobile wallet. I'm going to log into my account, simple PIN, and I get my entry screen up. Now at the top of the screen there you'll see the green dot with the dollar sign in it, and this is my pay with this phone application. So I'm just going to tap that, and on the merchant terminal I'm going to use QR codes because I think that's the most interesting application. The merchant terminal will display a QR code that's sent to it from our server. This is a unique code that's linked to this transaction and this account. Sorry, it's linked to this transaction. And what the consumer does is they hold the phone over the terminal, scan the code, and literally It's in a snap, it's taken the code, it's linked that code to the account on the, in the cloud, and we go back. It's taken the code, it's linked it to the transaction. The consumer then gets to choose which account they want to pay with. So they want to pay with your card, their debit card, a prepaid card, a voucher. They're all in there, and it can be selected on a case-by-case basis for each transaction. Get the opportunity to add a tip if you're feeling generous. It's not something I'm very used to, but I understand people do it. And you confirm the payment. Once the payment is confirmed, that then goes up to the cloud with the transaction information, which means that the merchant doesn't have any PCI issues with the terminal at all. That transaction never gets into, that account information never gets into the transaction until it gets to our secure servers. Once that authorization goes through, and that authorization goes through the normal rails, whether it's a Visa card, a MasterCard, an American Express card, a domestic product, it gets authorized. The authorization comes back in the normal way. I'm not going to go through that because I'm not going to bore you to death with how that works, because we all know how that works. It comes back to the terminal, and the phone gets a payment summary confirmation like this. And the job's done. You walk away, you've made your payment. For the clearing mechanism, it goes through the same process as any other normal card transaction, and there's really no pain for the merchant in dealing with this transaction, which is great as far as it goes. But what I think is really exciting about the application that we've built here is the opportunity to add in offers to the phone. Now, because of the technology in the phone, we can make them location-based, or we can make them time-based, and you have the opportunity to sell that marketing opportunity out to your merchant base to put onto your application for your consumers. If I take one of these applications and I activate it and I go and make my transaction, that offer is then applied to the transaction in real time as a transaction goes through. So there's no vouchers to mess around with, it's all done. As you can see here, it's a food offer, so I'm going to accept it. I'm going to take $1 off my coffee, and I'm going to pay, and I'm going to get my reduced value in the transaction. The great thing about this, for your merchants, where you have the relationships, is it gives them the opportunity to have that data about your consumer. So you know where they are, what they're doing, what they purchased, and all that merchant information is there available for you to use in your marketing. Unlike contactless cards, it's a mobile phone, so there's a lot of history data there. And you go into the history and you can see what you spent, where you spent it, where your money's gone when you come back from your shopping experience, what you're spending your money on, the usual sort of application you'd expect on a mobile phone. But here's the really exciting stuff about this. That's a point-of-sale application that works on a terminal. But because it's on QR codes, there's no reason why you can't put this anywhere else you